Well, thank you so much to everyone who's joining us today for another interview series for our Women in Sport Month. Today with us, we have Melanie Van Der Hoop. She is the Executive Director of the PGA of Ontario. So thank you, Mel, for joining us. We really appreciate you having you here with us today. It's awesome.
I'm flattered to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Awesome. So today we're just kind of going to talk about, Mel's journey with sport, her experience with work, and any other topics that come up. So just kind of dive in, I guess, to our first question today. So when did you know that you really wanted to be a part of sport? Is there, a specific moment or, opportunity that you can think of that came up that triggered this for you?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this one a lot yesterday. So sport has always been a big part of my life. I grew up with athletics being a huge part of who I was as a kid, and ultimately, through my growth into university, I was on the varsity soccer team, and it was always a big piece of who I was. And so I think the turning point for me was when I realized I could live in sport in a professional atmosphere. And that was my experience with the Toronto Invictus Games. So, I studied kinesiology in school because of my athletic background and because I was always so interested in, human biology, optimizing performance, and not really, in honesty, not really knowing what I wanted to do along that path, but knowing that those things were, big drivers for me, and something that would ignite a passion in whatever I was doing and wherever I ended up. So, studied kinesiology in school, had a couple jobs that, I didn't really love, but that were guiding me in figuring out what I really didn't like doing. And then this opportunity of the Invictus Games, which came to Toronto in 2017. And for those that don't know, that's like an international military games for ill and injured servicemen and women. So it was really an incredible opportunity to get involved. And it was 2 years on that organizing committee of working in sport and planning a mega sporting event as it was. And so that for me, I think really, lit this fire within me to say, okay, I know that sport has always been important, but it was always an extracurricular part of my life until I started working there. And that, that experience in itself was really just kind of what, spurred me to say, okay, I can work in sport and I can love what I do every day. And so that really opened a lot of doors for me as well. And it really inspired me to sort of get to know people in the sporting industry and build my network with those people to say, okay, I still don't really know exactly where I fit here, but I know this is where I want to be and it's where I want to work. So that was definitely my turning point. Yeah.
Totally. So I guess from that, looking at your experience with the Invictus Games, was it more so, planning this like mega event that was, seen on like a global scale, or was it game day operations, like kind of like going in and really seeing like how the fans feel and how everyone feels in the game day? Or
Yeah, that's a great question. You can't really compare the two, to be honest. I mean, I am a planner, but I'm also like to my core, I'm an operations person. So the beautiful thing about the games was that it was something no one has ever really experienced before. You're seeing these people that have been discharged from their active military because of, physical disabilities, mental disabilities. They're dealing with PTSD, all sorts of things that would render you feeling hopeless, helpless, the inability to connect with your own family, serious depression, suicidal thoughts, all these really negative things that I got to witness during the games of, their growth out of that state and their rehabilitation through sport. And that's really what it was, hearing all of these individual stories and seeing how far these people had come from that dark and scary place to being on a world stage. The ability to participate in the Invictus Games was, we were giving them a platform to share their story and to share the power of sport through their own rehab and their own involvement, their own training. So that was what was really cool about, the operations side of it, is it wasn't just seeing it all come together. It was like the actual opportunity to connect with these athletes from all over the world, And just, I guess, that reminder that we're all human and we all have our demons, but sport can be such a transformative vehicle into, onto a better path and onto a stronger life. But the planning side of it was also very cool. I had a huge opportunity over those 2 years to get to know hundreds of volunteers. I was responsible for managing 860 something individual volunteers.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was, as you can imagine, that's a little overwhelming, but we had some support. We had some people step up as our sort of leads, and it's all about just growing the network. And I think that's what I loved about it so much too, is it really felt like a team atmosphere, and that's what we needed to be able to pull off something of that magnitude. And so me being a soccer player, I am very team oriented. I am very much, yes, I'll be the leader, but this takes all of us to win and all of us to succeed. And that's what it really felt like working there. So that was a pretty cool experience too.
Wow. No, that's crazy. I can't imagine, working together with a team. 800 volunteers. Oh my gosh. Sometimes managing like 4 is hard. That's
Looking
crazy.
back at it now, I don't know how I did it. I don't know how I don't have a head full of gray hair, but that's
Coffee.
what's so special. The blonde hides the gray. But that's what's so special about doing something that you love, right? Is as crazy as it sounds, and as crazy as your workload can get, it's just if you're really enjoying the atmosphere and the people that you're working with, and your individual mission aligns with what the vision is of what your corporation is doing, then there's no question about, it's crazy, yes, but you don't go home and, you don't wake up in the morning and hate that you have to go into work. It's just another day to get you one step closer to this vision of creating something special with the people that you're there with, right? So
Definitely.
it makes
Yeah.
it.
And it's crazy. Yeah. If it's like something you're passionate about, yeah, like you said, it doesn't feel like work, right? Which I really like. There's like this, interesting idea of managing like purpose and progress to move, from burnout to,
Right.
like a standout phase. And I think, yeah, if you like love sport, there's no way you can really work in anything else, right?
Well, that's exactly it. Like the burnout, I think, is the big piece, right? Is, I look at what my day to day was like at that time, and I mean, I don't know how we did what we did. I don't know how any one of us did what we did to pull this off, but that's what I'm saying. Like if you're motivated by it, and if it's to your core what you love doing. I know it sounds so cliche, if you love what you do, you're never working a day in your life. I hate hearing things like that, but it really is true when you can, look back at your own life and realize some of the incredible things that you've done and been a part of. And, that for me was one of them. And that's why it was a real turning point in my career was, I can do this, and I loved doing it. And even though it was mental in retrospect, it was, it helped me see how much I really have a passion for working in sport, and how important, the experience of sport and the lessons learned in sport play such a big role in my life and in who I am today.
100%. No, that's very cool. So I guess, balancing, that burnout and scheduling yourself and, figuring out how to manage all of these, 800 volunteers at once. What
Yeah.
has, kind of been your biggest learning curve, I guess, as a woman, specifically more so in the sports industry? And I mean, this might pertain to, your position at the PGA, golf is literally, gentlemen only, ladies forbidden. So I know that's definitely a bit more of an old
Right.
boys club, but
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm going to apply that to my more recent years of experience. So I started working with the PGA about 2.5 years ago. I've just stepped into this executive director role just over a year ago. So it was a very quick transition, some might say. I think the biggest thing for me, I mean, the learning curve in itself, just because of my short tenure and sort of my ability to grow into this leadership position has been so quick. I mean, the learning curve has been like drinking water through a fire hose. So when I think about, one of the core lessons that I've learned, especially as a woman in the industry, it's having the confidence in yourself to know what you want and to ask for it. And that for me, I learned that, you know, before I was given this promotion, was given this huge opportunity to lead a professional golf association in the province. You know, I wouldn't be here if I waited for someone to see the potential in me. I wouldn't be here if I waited for someone to say, oh, this is, you know, this is your dream, here it is, and let me just hand it to you on a silver platter, right? I wouldn't be here if I waited for that,
Yeah.
you know? And I think that's the big thing is, as a woman, I don't know that it's culturally as encouraged for us to speak up about even just to share our thoughts and ideas, but on a bigger picture, especially when you're in a boardroom of men only, especially in a male-dominated industry, a male-dominated sport, as we all know. You know, I think it's important, and I've had to learn this the hard way, that if you have to be your biggest cheerleader. You have to trust in yourself. You have to know what you're capable of, and you have to know what you want. And it doesn't need to be what you want for the rest of your life. It needs to be, what do I want to get out of this position right now, and what do I have to offer? And if you're confident in those things, if you're not confident in those things, no one else will see that in you either. If you don't trust yourself, no one will trust you. You know, you have to be your biggest motivator, your biggest cheerleader, and you have to know your value, what you're worth, and then share that with the world, right? So if you see an opportunity that comes up, like I did, to progress through the PGA, and you want that, you got to ask for it. You know, you got to have the guts to say, I might not know how to do every aspect of the job, but that's okay. I'll learn that. You know, I'm motivated. I know what I can bring to the table, and I know I want this, and I know I can do it. You know, that's always the bottom line, is just asking for it. Really is, you know, no one's going to give you something if you don't attack it, if you don't go after it, if you don't say, hey, you know, I can do this. And that's really hard to do. That's really hard to do it was hard to do for me, and I'll speak about my own experience, but I can imagine that that's hard to do for anybody. But certainly for women, especially when you're, you know, looking to sport, which is generally male dominated. It's about stepping out of that comfort zone to say, hey, you know, I'm here too, and this is what I can do, and this is what I'm made of.
Yeah, no, and I think that's phenomenal, like phenomenal advice. I mean, when you look at some of the statistics when it comes to, you know, HR and applying for jobs and job hunting, it's like women are 4 times less likely to apply for a job if they don't think they're qualified versus men. And I don't know if that's, you know, just this like timid nature that we're supposed to have or what that is, but I think if you're applying for a job where, you know everything or you can do everything, frankly, you're overqualified, right? You need to, push yourself and look for positions that give you an ability to learn from people who have that industry knowledge, but also you can learn by doing. I think that's really important, and people, I think, kind of forget that, especially, for the students who are watching, when it comes to co-ops, right? There might be co-op positions where you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm in first year, I don't think I'm qualified to do this. Well, no, speak to your past experiences. What can you bring forward with you? You have value, you have knowledge. So, you just need to convey that, right? I think that's really important.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. And now that I can speak to being on the other side of the interview process, I can tell you that rarely is an employer looking for a candidate that can already do the job. You know, it's like you said, if you're looking at a job description and you can say, tick, 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 yes, I can do all these things with confidence, you're not looking for the right job. You can do that job already, like that might be great, but that's not going to challenge you. That's not going to motivate you. And I think, it comes down to finding experiences and opportunities that scare the absolute crap out of you, right? You're never going to grow if you're doing, transitioning into something that you can already do. That's a lateral move. You got to find something that really scares the pants off you to say, okay, I know I can do bits and pieces of this, and what are the other things, and can I learn them? And that's the important part, is if you're motivated, if you're driven by your passion, you'll be resourceful to figure out what else you're missing, what else you need to learn. Like an employer, a company can always teach you those skills that are related to the job. They can't teach someone to be motivated. They can't teach someone to be passionate about what they're doing every day, right? and I think you're right. I think generally speaking, and I could be making the most ignorant comment here, but I think generally speaking, if a man and a woman were to look at a job description with the exact same skill set, experience, qualifications, I think probably 9 times out of 10, if there are half of the, requirements on that job description that you can't do, I think the man is always going to be more likely to apply for that job than the woman is. And I think that's just our culture today, is that as a woman, we are told every day, probably 1,000 times a day, that we are not smart enough, pretty enough, thin enough, fill in the blank, insert here, like we're not enough is the bottom line. That's what we are. That's what is ingrained in us through our social media, through every channel that we have.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important to know that you are enough, know that you are just as much of a powerful candidate as the next person, whether they be a man or a woman. We are enough. And it always comes down to, who you are and who you want to be and what motivates you. And if you are, following your heart, your passion, you'll learn the rest of it as you go. I certainly wasn't given this opportunity to, lead this association because I knew how to do it all already.
Yeah.
Like, let's put this in perspective, right? I wasn't given this opportunity because they said, oh, well, she's the easy hire because she can do it already. No, they said, okay, she doesn't fit the mold. She's not a golf professional. Our pros don't really know her very well. She's a woman. We've never had a female exec. And it was years of that for me. And it's something I still continue to do is to reach out to people, as many people as I can, that are going to help me progress on my journey. And I think that that's the biggest message I can send to students and to anyone in their 20s, really, is just put your ego aside and invite someone to a coffee. And, now if it's virtual, so be it. But it's really important that we focus on growing our networks, because you never know when those dots are going to connect for you. At what point down the path is someone going to think of you and say, oh, there's a job opportunity available here. I know someone, like that's the beauty of making those connections, is they might not have a job available at all. Maybe it's just getting to know them. But the flip is that they get to know you as a person, right? They get to know you and what you are passionate about, and you leave an imprint on them, so that when something comes up down the road, they can say, oh, you know what? I met this cool chick, Sid. I think she'd be great for this. Let me throw her name in the ring and see if she's interested, right? And that's the beauty of the connection of building your network. And I hate when people say it, because I hate having to do it, but it's the only way I got to where I am today.
Yeah.
My last 4 jobs have been through networking and people that I've met over coffee dates.
Totally. And I think in sport too, we have a very unique opportunity. Yes, there's the coffee date side of things that you mentioned, but there's also volunteering, right? Volunteering through sport, I think, is kind of looked down upon. Most students, they want to intern at MLS. They want to, do the big name stuff, right?
But yeah, they want the sexy opportunity, right?
And
of
I
course.
totally get it, right? It looks good on your resume, but when you volunteer, you meet so many people. Yeah, I met you through a volunteer opportunity, right? And I think not only do you get to expand your network through volunteering, but you also, like you mentioned earlier, with jobs that you have that you didn't like, you get to kind of test run jobs, test run organizations, be like, do I really like what they're about? Do I like how they treat their people? Get to dip your toe in without signing a contract, right? I think that's something I would also recommend. I think I've gotten to, a lot of the places I have and, jobs that I have because I have volunteered, right?
Yeah. And as you said, actually, you kind of said this without saying it, but it also gives you an opportunity to figure out what you really don't like.
Yes.
And I think that's a big takeaway for me as well, is, I went through a few years of, coming out of school and not knowing exactly what I wanted to do. And going into university, you kind of think, okay, well, I don't have all the answers, but I will after these 4 years, right? And that's sort of your juvenile mentality of thinking the world will just unfold for you. But it took me a few years, of trying different things and of volunteering and of putting myself into different roles, into sales roles, into service roles, into I worked as a rehabilitation therapist. So I was in the service of people, but it was still sort of healthcare related. And I felt like I was making a difference, right? And connecting with people.
Yeah.
And so, am I doing any of those things now? In a way. But those stepping stones are what led me to something that I'm enjoying exponentially more today than I did at the time. And that's just by taking those steps of taking opportunities that I didn't know if I'd like, but I learned that I didn't, or I learned what I liked and what I didn't like about them. And I think that's kind of an easier way of looking at this idea of like having to have it all figured out. And I think that can be so intimidating because I don't think there is a right answer for anybody. And I don't think we're ever supposed to know. I think that's the reality of it, is that we're supposed to go through our lives and want different things and figure it out as we go along. But we put so much pressure on ourselves to just have the answer and to know where we're supposed to be and what our mission is and what we can give to the world. And I think really what it comes down to is just enjoying the journey, and just figuring out, if you don't know what you want to do, figuring out what you don't want to do and just try different things. Get into volunteering, as you said. That's such an easy way to dip your toe in the water and make a good impression on people along the way, because you never know when that's going to come back around.
Definitely. No, I think that's a good point. So I guess, to wrap everything up, my last question for you is, what does it mean to you, to be a woman in sport?
I just have a huge sense of pride to be in a position that I am today. I think that, being in this role, whether I'm a man or a woman, would be something that there's probably a lot of people that want to do what I do. And I'm lucky, I'm privileged that I have the opportunity to be in this seat. But I think even more so as a woman, there's this sense of leadership. There's this feeling of obligation to share my story, share how I got here, share who I am, and let people get to know me. And that's why, opportunities like this are so special, right? Where I get to sort of be on the other end of the conversation to pay it forward to anybody who might be watching this. But certainly, yeah, I mean, it's really special to be here, and it's really special to be here during this time in our history where we're starting, every day right now we're making history. We're really starting to pay attention to these conversations about women in the workplace, diversifying the people, like our work environments, the people we work with, our boards, our employees. Like, how are we working together? How are we maximizing what we're getting out of what we're all here to do? And that means welcoming the opportunity for everybody. Well, whether you're a woman, whether you're BIPOC, you see all these commercials now for hire BIPOC. Diversity and inclusion is so, that conversation is really starting to, light up everybody and every business, because now we have this sense of ownership to really pay attention. And so I'm just really proud to be part of this and to have the opportunity to represent the PGA in this way as well as a woman.
Definitely. No, very cool. Well, I guess, before we close up, any other topics you feel we didn't touch on that you wanted to mention, or questions that you have?
I think we covered it all.
Okay. Yeah.
But I will throw it out there too, I guess, that if anybody watching this wants to connect with me, my door is always open, and you can find my email address on our website at pgaofontario.com.
Perfect. Awesome. Thanks, Mel. I'm sure you will probably have some people reach out to you. This is exciting. But anyways, thank you again to all of our viewers who have tuned into our interview today. We have a couple more interviews that are going to be posted throughout the rest of the week. And don't forget to register, if you haven't already, for our upcoming case competition. Registration for that should be open right now. So thank you again for watching, and we will see you all soon.